What's something your parents believe that you don't?
Imagine scrolling through your family chat on a crisp December morning, coffee in hand, expecting the usual holiday cheer, only to read words that hit like a gut punch. No seat at the table for you or your little girl. But hey, keep the videos coming and don't forget the gifts. That's me, Emily, staring at my phone in disbelief, my heart sinking faster than a failed Black Friday deal, wondering how my own blood could turn the merriest time of year into a cold shoulder. But as the snow falls outside my modest Midwest apartment, a spark ignites. Not rage, exactly, but something sharper, wittier, ready to rewrite this script in ways they never saw coming. Stick with me, because what starts as exclusion ends in a twist that'll make you question every family gathering you've ever endured. I remember that morning clear as the frost on my windshield, sitting in my kitchen with Lily chattering about school crafts while I sipped my too-strong coffee and glanced at my phone out of habit. The family group chat popped up with its usual barrage of emojis and reminders about who was bringing what to Rebecca's big engagement party next weekend. Mom's message landed first, all businesslike in her precise typing, announcing that this Christmas, with the wedding reception crammed into our old family hall in Ohio, there simply wouldn't be room for me or Lily at the main table. She went on about prioritizing the bride's side and distant cousins flying in from California, as if we were afterthoughts instead of the ones who'd driven through blizzards for every holiday since Dad's retirement barbecue 5 years back. My stomach twisted, not just from the exclusion, but the casual way it was dropped, like forgetting to invite the neighbor to a block party. Before I could even process the sting, Rebecca chimed in with her signature flair, hearts and all, asking if I'd still whip up that fancy video montage for the reception like I always did for her milestones. She mentioned the one with the drone shots over the venue and heartfelt voiceovers that made everyone tear up at her college graduation. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, feeling that familiar mix of resentment bubbling up like overboiled gravy. Because yeah, I'd poured hours into those projects on my freelance editing laptop, staying up past midnight while Lily slept, all for the family that now treated us like optional extras in their holiday movie. Then Dad's text sealed it, blunt as his old workshop hammer, saying not to make them feel guilty because he still wanted his gift. That custom woodworking set I'd been eyeing at the local hardware store, the one he'd hinted at during Thanksgiving when he complained about his creaky tools. I read it all twice, the words blurring a bit as Lily asked why my face looked funny. Instead of firing back with the anger I felt churning inside, I just smiled at her, closed the chat with a soft click, and set the phone face down, deciding right then that arguing or begging would only give them the satisfaction of seeing me squirm. What in the heck was I supposed to do? Show up uninvited and cause a scene amid the twinkling lights and eggnog toasts? No, I needed something smarter, a plan that would let them dig their own hole while I held the shovel just out of sight. That afternoon, as I fired up my editing software to start on Rebecca's video draft, pulling clips from family albums of her laughing at proms and vacations we could barely afford, I couldn't resist a little tweak. Cropping out a background shot of me and Lily from last year's tree trimming so subtly that it looked like an innocent framing choice. But deep down, it felt like my first quiet jab, a way to erase our presence on their terms before they could do it again. Hours flew by in that digital haze, the screen's glow reflecting my determined grin, until Lily tugged at my sleeve for dinner. As I saved the file, an old email notification pinged from years ago, buried in my inbox, from Rebecca herself. Something about a secret she'd kept from the family that suddenly made the exclusion feel less random and more pointed, leaving me wondering just how deep this family frost ran. The rest of the day dragged with me replaying the chat in my head, folding laundry while Lily watched her favorite cartoon, the one with the singing elves that always made her giggle. But my mind was elsewhere, piecing together the little slights that had built up over years. Like how Rebecca got the down payment help for her first apartment from Mom and Dad, while I bootstrapped my way through single motherhood with late-night gigs and food stamps I never admitted to. Or the time Dad skipped Lily's school play because he had a fishing trip with his buddies, but showed up early for Rebecca's art show. It wasn't new, this feeling of being the reliable one who got sidelined, but the wedding made it sting sharper, like salt in a fresh cut during the holidays when everyone pretends families are picture perfect. By evening, as I tucked Lily in with stories of Santa's workshop, I felt that spark grow into a flicker of resolve. I'd go to the engagement party, smile through the pokes, and keep working on the video. But I'd do it my way, layering in just enough edge to make them pause. The email from Rebecca nagged at me though, its subject line faded but ominous. What I never told you. I didn't open it yet, not wanting to dive into whatever ghost it raised before the brunch. Instead, I lay awake, listening to the wind rattle the windows, plotting how one small omission in the video could start the unraveling. Little did I know, that secret would pull threads from the whole family tapestry, leading to choices I'd question long after the bells stopped ringing. The days blurred into that pre-holiday frenzy after the chat, with Black Friday ads blasting from every store radio and me dodging crowds at the mall to pick up wrapping paper and those last-minute gifts Mom always nagged about. But the real test came at Rebecca's engagement brunch that Saturday, where I showed up with Lily in tow, her little hand in mine as we navigated the floral archway at the country club, the air thick with cinnamon scones and whispers from aunts I'd known since diaper days, all of them cooing over the centerpieces that must have cost a small fortune while I scanned the room for any sign that the exclusion message had been a glitch or a joke gone wrong. Mom greeted us at the door with air kisses that barely grazed my cheek, her eyes flicking over my outfit like it was last season's clearance rack before steering me toward the gift table to unload the handmade ornaments I'd spent evenings crafting from Lily's drawings, each one painted with scenes from our modest celebrations that suddenly felt worlds apart from this polished affair where crystal pitchers of orange juice sparkled under chandeliers and waitstaff in crisp uniforms circulated trays of quiches that no one seemed to touch. Rebecca held court near the head table in her designer sweater, glowing under the light as she recounted her fiancé Mark's proposal story for the umpteenth time, complete with details about the yacht off the Florida Keys that their combined incomes could actually afford, unlike the ramen years I'd scraped by on after my divorce, her laughter ringing out while she accepted compliments on the venue that she'd chosen for its intimate yet grand vibe, a phrase that twisted the knife deeper knowing. Intimate didn't extend to squeezing in one more chair for Lily and me at the reception. I kept my smile pasted on, nodding along as Dad clapped Mark on the back and joked about grandkids soon joining the family fold, his booming laughter a tad too loud to cover the way he avoided my gaze, probably still smarting from that guilt trip text he'd sent about his gift. But the subtle dig started almost immediately when Cousin Carla sidled up with a plate of fruit salad and asked if Lily and I were sitting with the kids' table at the reception. Her tone light but probing as if testing the waters of the family's latest awkward decision. Rebecca laughed it off with a wave of her manicured hand, saying space was tight but we'd be welcome in the overflow room with the Coates and carolers. Her words landing like a polite slap that made my chest tighten with that familiar exclusion gnawing like a bad holiday leftover left too long in the fridge. Yet I bit my tongue and helped serve mimosas to the guests instead of spilling the hurt that had me replaying the chat during sleepless nights when the house creaked and my mind raced with what ifs. What good would confrontation do in a room full of crystal glasses and forced cheer, especially with Lily beaming up at the pretty dresses and whispering about how she'd catch the bouquet someday, her innocence a shield I didn't want to pierce with adult grudges that had simmered since our teen years when Rebecca got the spotlight for every talent show while I fixed the props backstage. Instead, I channeled the bubbling resentment into something slyer during a quiet moment by the buffet, snapping a quick photo of the overflowing gift pile with my phone and posting it to my Instagram story, captioning it with "Family first, always room for more," or less, accompanied by a neutral holiday filter that could pass for harmless humor among my followers, but carried just enough edge to make Mom text me 5 minutes later asking what on earth I meant by that cryptic nonsense, her message dripping with that familiar defensiveness that always surfaced when anyone hinted at the family's uneven scales. The brunch dragged on with endless toasts to the happy couple's future, laughter echoing off the wood-paneled walls. As Mark's relatives from the city shared stories of their high-flying careers that made my freelance video editing sound like a hobby, and I fielded questions from aunts about whether I'd found anyone new since the divorce, their pitying smiles underscoring how the family viewed me as the perpetual single mom holding down the fort while Rebecca soared into marital bliss. Lily colored quietly at a side table with crayons I'd packed, her focus on drawing a family tree that branched out in happy loops, oblivious to the undercurrents pulling at me like invisible strings. And as the afternoon waned with dessert trays of petit fours and coffee service, Dad pulled me aside near the coat check, his breath carrying the faint tang of bourbon-laced punch from an earlier flask sip. Muttering in a low voice about a secret investment he'd made years back with some of the family savings, something tied to that old heirloom necklace Rebecca was wearing around her neck like a badge of their shared legacy, the one Mom always claimed came straight from Grandma's side without ever mentioning the messy financial strings attached to it. His words hung in the air like fog rolling in from the nearby lake, making me question if the wedding exclusions masked deeper tangles of money woes and old debts rather than mere logistical oversights. And as we drove home through the darkening streets with Lily humming carols in the back seat about reindeer games, I couldn't shake the feeling that peeling back this layer of the heirloom's history might unravel more than just holiday plans. Especially when my phone buzzed again with Rebecca's follow-up demand for a video preview by Monday, or the whole montage would look amateur next to the professional photographer they'd hired. Her expectation pulling me right back into the role of unpaid family fixer just as the first real cracks in their perfect facade began to show. Holiday shopping turned into my personal battlefield that week, weaving through the packed aisles of the local department store where frantic parents jostled for the last shelves of toys and twinkling lights. All while I mentally tallied up what to get Dad without feeding into a sense of entitlement that had been glaring since his blunt text about the gift. The air heavy with the scent of fake pine from artificial trees and the blare of seasonal tunes that promised joy but only amplified the knot in my stomach from the brunch's lingering awkwardness. Rebecca's demand for that video preview by Monday loomed like a deadline from a demanding client, pulling me deeper into the role of family videographer even as the exclusion from the reception table festered like an untreated splinter, making every step past the holiday displays feel like a reminder of how my contributions always came gift-wrapped in expectations while Lily and I got the short end, literally no seat in sight. I confided in my old friend Sarah over steaming mugs of coffee at the corner diner that afternoon, the vinyl booths creaking under us as I spilled the details of the chat and the brunch digs, my voice dropping low between bites of apple pie a la mode that tasted more like regret than comfort, and she leaned in with her no-nonsense stare, calling the whole setup straight-up crappy and urging me to bail on the video altogether. Let them hire some overpriced pro and deal with the fallout of their own making. But I waved it off with a half-laugh, admitting that deep down I still clung to this hope that showing up with grace and my editing skills might finally crack through their selfish shells, even if it meant swallowing the bitterness that had me second-guessing every faded family photo where I'd smiled from the sidelines, the kind of passivity that probably had Sarah, and anyone hearing this, shaking their heads in frustration, wondering why I didn't just load up Lily and drive straight to a quiet beach for Christmas instead of dancing to their tune like a puppet on frayed strings. Viewers might disagree with my softness right there in the diner, pushing for me to fire off a group message calling out the hypocrisy, but holding back felt like the smarter play for now. A way to gather quiet ammunition without igniting a full-blown war that could scorch Lily's innocent view of grandparents and aunts as holiday heroes. Mom's guilt trip call came that evening as I wrapped gifts in our cramped living room, her voice sharp over the speakerphone about how the ornaments I'd brought to the brunch were lovely but not quite right for the reception decor, implying I'd skimped when really I'd poured heart into each one from Lily's sketches of snowmen and stars, and she piled on about expecting my usual generosity for Dad's woodworking set since he'd deserved a proper retirement hobby after years of supporting us all. Her words twisting the knife by framing my exclusion as some deserved comeuppance for being the independent one who didn't need their handouts anymore. The dilemmas piled up like the discarded wrapping paper scraps on the floor, with me agreeing to tweak the video playlist while my mind raced with memories of how Mom had favored Rebecca's dreams from the start. funding her art classes and trips abroad while I learned video editing from free online tutorials to pay for Lily's daycare, a rift that the wedding seemed designed to widen under the guise of festive unity. That night, as Lily and I strung up our modest tree with dollar store lights that flickered just enough to cast warm shadows on the walls, she insisted on digging through the attic boxes we'd shoved up there after our last move. Her small hands pulling out an old photo album thick with yellowed pages and forgotten snapshots from family gatherings before the cracks really showed. We flipped through together, laughing at the awkward haircuts from the 80s and the vacations where Dad's old station wagon broke down halfway to the lake, but then Lily paused on a faded picture of Rebecca and me as kids posing at Grandma's farm under a harvest moon, the same heirloom necklace dangling from Rebecca's neck even back then, and when she turned it over, there was a scribbled note in what looked like Mom's handwriting about Dad's side arrangement, with a woman named Clara, a name that rang a vague bell from hushed arguments I'd overheard as a teen when money got tight and Dad worked late. Shifts that smelled like cheap perfume. My heart skipped a beat, Lily tilting her head and asking what a side arrangement meant in her curious 6-year-old way, her eyes wide with that pure confusion that made me tuck the photo away quickly into my pocket, murmuring something about grown-up business while promising we'd look at more fun pictures tomorrow, because dropping that potential bomb right then would shatter the fragile holiday bubble we'd built with hot cocoa and carols, forcing me into a choice between protecting her from the family's underbelly or using it as leverage in ways that might backfire spectacularly. The internal tug-of-war kept me up late, staring at the tree's glow as Lily snored softly in the next room, and for my next subtle move, I curated that shared Spotify playlist for Rebecca's reception with a mix of upbeat holiday tracks laced with ironic undercurrents, slipping in songs like Family Portrait by Pink that delved into fractured homes and Thank You Next by Ariana Grande about cutting ties with a wink, selections she'd likely dismiss as trendy picks for the dance floor, but that would linger like an itch during her vows, a witty nudge at the uneven family dynamics without naming names outright. As the playlist finalized on my laptop screen and I hit send with a casual text about how it'd set the perfect tone, my phone lit up with another message from Dad, casual on the surface about swinging by early for his gift pickup, but laced with an undercurrent that hinted he knew I'd overheard his investment slip at the brunch, pulling me deeper into the web of secrets that tied the necklace, the exclusions, and the wedding into one tangled knot, leaving me to wonder if withholding that photo for now was mercy or just delaying the inevitable storm brewing under the mistletoe. The rehearsal dinner crept up on that crisp December evening like an uninvited guest slipping in through the back door, drawing me and Lily back to the family hall in Ohio, where wreaths hung heavy with red ribbons and white lights twinkled against the wooden beams, creating an illusion of warmth that barely masked the undercurrents of tension simmering since the shopping week's discoveries, with the photo's scribbled note about Dad's side arrangement burning a hole in my pocket like a guilty secret I hadn't decided whether to air out or bury deeper under layers of holiday pretense. Mark's relatives mingled with our side in a haze of small talk and passed around appetizers of shrimp cocktail and cheese puffs that stuck to the fingers, their city polish clashing with the small-town familiarity of aunts swapping recipes for green bean casserole, while Mom directed the setup like a general marshalling troops, her clipboard in hand, as she adjusted seating charts that still relegated Lily and me to the periphery near the kitchen doors, a spot from which we could hear the toasts, but not join them without raising voices over the clatter of dishes. I arrived with my camera bag slung over one shoulder, the weight of it a familiar anchor as I moved through the crowd capturing candids of Rebecca in her rehearsal gown, her laughter bright and performative while she posed with Mark under the archway strung with poinsettias, but inside, the knot in my gut twisted tighter with every forced smile I mustered. Knowing this was the prelude to the reception where my video would play on loop yet we'd watch from the shadows like unpaid extras in someone else's big production. Dad nursed a tumbler of what smelled like scotch on the rocks near the bar, his eyes darting away whenever our paths crossed, probably sensing I'd pieced together fragments of his investment slip from the brunch and the photo's hint at Clara, that name now echoing in my mind as the potential key to why the family Savings had dwindled and resentments festered, turning holidays into minefields where exclusions felt less like oversights and more like calculated cuts to keep old skeletons locked away. The conflicts crested during the mock ceremony when Rebecca took her place at the altar setup, her voice carrying a rehearsed tremor as she practiced her vows about fresh starts and unbreakable bonds. Words that rang hollow against the heirloom necklace glinting at her throat, a symbol I'd come to see as the thread linking Dad's indiscretion to the wedding's inflated costs. With Mom hovering nearby to fluff her train and shoot me warning glances that screamed keep your mouth shut for the sake of the evening's fragile peace. Part of me wondered if my choice to show up without a fuss, camera in hand and playlist queued on my phone, was just another layer of cowardice masquerading as maturity, the kind that excused their slights as mere holiday stress even as it left me hollowed out. Prioritizing lilies. Wide-eyed wonder at the decorations over the urge to confront the hypocrisy right there amid the floral centerpieces and flickering candles, a decision so passive it might have folks listening to this story leaning forward in disbelief, urging me to drop the photo on the table and watch the perfect facade crumble before the first dance even started. Rebecca pulled me into a side hug during a break in the proceedings, her perfume cloying as she whispered that she hadn't meant to hurt us with the seating, but the reception symbolized her clean slate away from past family baggage. Her eyes flicking to Dad with a flicker of something like shared knowledge that exposed the old jealousy from our teen years when she'd envied my quiet independence scraping by on video gigs while she chased pageants funded by parental checks, forcing me to nod along and murmur reassurances even as the dilemma clawed at me, torn between weaving the truth into the video for subtle sabotage or holding back to shield Lily from the fallout of revelations that could paint her grandparents as anything but the jolly figures in her storybooks. The internal debate raged quietly as I helped arrange the place settings, my hands steady on the linen napkins while my thoughts raced with scenarios where exposing Clara's shadow might free me from the unpaid labor, but also fracture alliances Lily might need later. A tug-of-war that bought me time but chipped away at my resolve like ice thawing under a weak sun, especially when Cousin Carla cornered me by the dessert table with questions about why I wasn't more involved in the planning, her innocent probe hitting too close to the chat's raw nerve. For the prelude to the gift exchange that capped the rehearsal, I handed over Dad's woodworking set wrapped in festive paper printed with tiny saws and hammers that I'd chosen for their ironic nod to cutting ties, but inside the box, I'd swapped the premium chisels for ones from the discount bin at the hardware store, engraving a small brass plate on the lid with the cheeky inscription, "For all the little cuts that add up over time." A phrase witty enough to pass as thoughtful encouragement for his hobby, but laced with enough truth about the family's nicks at my pride and wallet to make him pause when he unwrapped it later. His chuckle forced as Mom hovered with approving nods that felt like echoes in an empty hall. The evening wound down with practice dances to the playlist I'd curated, guests swaying to the ironic tracks that now carried double meanings in the dim light. Rebecca's poise holding as she twirled with Mark, but her glance my way sharpening with unspoken questions about the song choices, and as Lily yawned against my leg clutching a leftover cookie from the kids' tray. We made our way toward the coat room amid the dispersing crowd, the air cooling with the night's chill seeping through the doors. That's when I overheard it, Rebecca and Mark murmuring in a shadowed corner near the exit about how the wedding's true anchor was Dad's long overdue fix for those past mistakes with Clara, the settlement that had drained the funds, and now propped up this celebration as a cover for rewriting history without loose ends like me knowing too much. Their whispers linking straight to the photo secrets and the investment woes in a way that left me frozen in the doorway, phone in hand with the half-edited video files glowing on the screen, torn between deleting the whole project to spite them or layering in those final clues that could upend their Christmas charade before the sun rose on the big day. Christmas Eve finally descended on the family hall like a heavy blanket of snow, blanketing the parking lot in white flurries that crunched underfoot as Lily and I stepped out of the car. The air crisp with the promise of midnight mass bells and the faint scent of wood smoke from nearby chimneys, but inside my chest, the overheard whispers from the rehearsal coiled tight like a spring ready to snap, pulling me toward the reception doors where strings of lights draped the entrance and guests in. Festive sweaters already clustered around the punch bowl, their chatter a festive hum that drowned out the doubts I'd wrestled with all night after that frozen moment in the coat room. The hall brimmed with holiday excess, a towering pine tree dominating the corner strung with heirloom ornaments that caught the glow from crystal garlands, and tables groaned under roasts carved at a side station and pies piled high with whipped cream. Yet the seating charts Mom had fussed over still funneled Lily and me to a side alcove with folding chairs and a view of the coats rack, a spot that let us observe the main action like distant relatives crashing the wrong party. The exclusion now a living reality that made every twinkling bulb feel like a spotlight on the family's skewed priorities. Rebecca moved through the crowd like a queen in her white lace gown accented with fur trim, accepting hugs and toasts from Mark's out-of-town kin, who marveled at the setup funded by what I'd pieced together as Dad's patched-up indiscretions. Her heirloom necklace front and center as the symbol of their timeless legacy, while Mom fluttered about adjusting name cards with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her glances my way carrying the weight of unspoken pleas to play along for the evenings. Sake. I kept my camera slung around my neck, capturing snippets for the video that now sat finalized on a USB drive in my purse, the edits layered with those subtle clues from the photo and Dad's slips, but the conflict swelled as Dad sidled up during the cocktail hour, his face ruddy from an early start on the eggnog and his voice dropping to a gravelly murmur about how the wedding costs had spiraled because of that old settlement with Clara, the woman whose shadow had drained the family coffers years ago to keep his affair quiet, a confession that hit like a cold gust through the warmth, confirming the necklace as payoff collateral and the exclusions as a way to sideline me before I connected the dots fully. His words hung between us amid the carol singers warming up on a small stage, making the room's cheer feel like a brittle shell over the rot beneath, and I nodded slowly, my mind racing with the dilemma of whether to voice the hurt right there, call out how his secrets had ripple effected into treating Lily and me like inconvenient footnotes, or hold the line one last time, a choice so steeped in my ingrained role as the peacemaker that it probably frustrated anyone following this tale. Urging a bolder stand amid the mistletoe and merriment instead of this simmering restraint that protected the illusion for Lily's sake as she clutched my hand and pointed at the dessert table's gingerbread village. The tensions peaked during the dinner service when Rebecca took the microphone for a preview of her vows, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion about building unbreakable bonds free from past shadows, but her eyes locked on mine for a split second. A flicker of recognition that she'd known about Clara all along and orchestrated the seating to keep the narrative clean, her jealousy from our shared history now weaponized into this holiday rewrite where my independence made me the outsider. Threat. Mom interjected with a toast to family unity, her glass raised high but her free hand gripping the table edge, and as the applause died down, Cousin Carla leaned in with a sympathetic whisper about the overflow setup being just practical, her words only fueling the internal storm where I weighed exposing the photo's note to shatter the evening or letting the video do the subtle work, a passive path that bought catharsis without chaos, but left me questioning my own spine in the mirror of their entitlement. Laughter bubbled from the dance floor as the playlist kicked in with its ironic tracks, guests swaying to Family Portrait without grasping the undercurrents I'd woven in, Rebecca's smile tightening as the lyrics hit too close, and Dad pulled Mom aside for a hushed argument that ended with her shooting me a glare, the air thickening with the unspoken accusations I'd planted through casual chats and now amplified in the room's festive haze. For the revenge that had been building like pressure in a sealed jar, I waited until the MC called for the video montage, slipping the USB into the projector setup with a nod to the tech guy who'd been briefed as my neutral ally from a local AV rental, and as the screen lit up with clips of Rebecca's milestones. Laced with faded family shots, the edit unfolded cleverly, drone views over the venue giving way to that old farm photo with the necklace highlighted, a voiceover I recorded in my softest tone narrating some legacies carry hidden costs. But family tables should always have room for the truth, freezing on an image of Lily and me from last Christmas smiling amid our simple tree, captioned simply, "Here's to the ones who hold it all together." Gasps rippled through the crowd like dominoes, Rebecca's poise cracking as she clutched Mark's arm while Dad stammered excuses about misunderstandings from the past, Mom's face paling to match the snow outside. The witty reveal satisfying in its precision without vulgar outbursts, chipping away at their facade with digital elegance that left them scrambling amid the carols. The night dissolved into awkward clusters of whispers and hurried hugs, guests milling with second helpings forgotten as the DJ faded the music, and Lily tugged at my coat, asking if we could go home to our cocoa now, her confusion a quiet anchor as we slipped out into the flurries, the reception's forced cheer echoing faintly behind like a distant radio signal. Driving through the starry Ohio night with the wipers swiping at fresh snow, I glanced at Lily dozing in the back seat and felt the weight lift slightly, but ambiguity settled in like the cold. Had my unraveling truly freed us from the cycle of exclusions and secrets, or just traded one rift for deeper ones that might echo into future holidays? Leaving me to ponder if forgiveness lurks beyond the wrapping paper, or if some family bonds stay forever lopsided, unanswered questions hanging as thick as the mist rising from the road ahead.